I'm back, still responding to Frank Turek. Let's dive back into it.
Now, second question, can science disprove God? You hear atheists sometimes saying this. Science can disprove God.
Well, no, science can't disprove every single idea of a god due to moving the goalposts to the point where gods are unverifiable. But we can prove or disprove certain things that you've claimed God to have done, such as flood the entire world over or create the world less than 10,000 years ago. But no, we have no indication of an invisible, unobservable, unmeasurable God. But why should I believe in such a God?
He says this. Suppose you have a Ford motor car in front of you, like a Model T. He says, what accounts for the Ford motor car? I'll give you two possibilities. Henry Ford or the laws of internal combustion. And the students look at it and go, wait, Dr. Lennox, you need both. You need Henry Ford to create the car, and then you need the laws of internal combustion to allow the car to operate, to work. And he goes, aha, yes, you see it now. Why can't atheists see this point? You can study a Model T and its engine and how it works from now till doomsday. You will never disprove the existence of Henry Ford.
Well, no, considering the fact that we already know Henry Ford to exist beforehand, which really makes this a false analogy. But while we can't disprove an incorporeal God, we still don't see any proof that he does exist. Why, then, should we believe in him? I hardly have seen any atheist say that we have completely 100% disproven every single idea of a God, but instead, the vast majority of atheists that I've met, talked to, or heard from, they don't see any indication that a God exists, and that's why they don't believe. It's not necessarily because we've disproven such an ethereal God, but instead that we have no reason to believe in him.
The more you learn about the car, in fact, may cause you to go, wait a minute, this car appears to be designed. And it points back to a designer.
Ah, the good old watchmaker argument. Still using that one, are we? But no, it does not point back to a designer. When I see an engine, yes, I do think that it is designed, but that's not because of the complexity of it per se, but instead because I am aware of the concept of manufacturing, and this engine matches what I understand man-made machinery to be. This is another false analogy. The fact that we make complex things does not mean that every complex thing is made in the same way. In order for God to be the best explanation for this complexity in, say, animals, you have to first either prove or assume that God exists. This is not proof in and of itself.
Atheists look at the world and go, well, we don't see God out there. That would be like looking at the Model T and looking in the engine and going, saying, I don't see Henry Ford in there. Of course, he's not part of the car. He created the car. God isn't part of the universe. He created the universe.
But the Bible doesn't actually say any of that. The Bible clearly portrays God as being a physical being, since he walked, sat, and talked to Adam, Eve, Abraham, Moses. He has a throne in the sky that is covered up by a cloud. He has a face and a back, and he ordered the Israelites to bury their dung because he was going to be walking in the midst of their camp. Hell, Abraham even made food for him. But granted, that's mostly in the earlier portion of the Old Testament, and the story has kind of changed since then, especially in the New Testament. But I wonder why that is. I wonder why the concept of the Judeo-Christian God changed from a really physical being to being an ethereal, invisible God who no longer intervenes, shows himself, or really talks to anybody in the modern day. Whatever the reason is, it's kind of convenient, isn't it?
It had to be put together by intelligence. In fact, let's take a look at the two types of science. There's empirical science, and then there's forensic science. Empirical science studies the present, whereas forensic science studies the past. Empirical science determines or discovers how things operate, whereas forensic science discovers how things originated. Empirical science is repeatable, but forensic science is not repeatable. It's a one-time historical event. So if you want to figure out scientifically what happened at the O.J. Simpson murders, you have to be like a detective. And you have to look at clues and draw an inference to the best explanation. What murdered or who murdered these people? You can't repeat it in a lab. Now, I submit to you that when atheists are out there trying to say that science has disproven God or science shows we don't need God, what they're using is they're using the prestige of empirical science and imposing it on forensic science. We're arguing over these things. This science is much more secure than this science. This science you can repeat. This science you have to draw inferences.
Okay, Frank Turek calls himself Dr. Frank Turek, and he's quite proud of the fact that he has both a master's and a doctorate, but he's not eager to tell you in what. But the information is out there. He has a master's in public administration and a doctorate in the philosophy of religion from a religious school. So I think it's safe to say that he's not a scientist. Why then is he now a science communicator all of a sudden? And I'm telling you this because I want it to be perfectly clear that this is not an actual scholarly scientific point of view of science, but instead this is a creationist's understanding of science, which is an attempt to discredit the concepts of evolution and cosmology. So no, we can't directly observe things like large-scale evolution or the formation of the Earth. But the evidence that we have for our understandings of those things is definitely empirical. While we don't have our early human ancestors with us right now, we do have some of their remains, which we can repeatably and empirically draw conclusions from. It's not like we're making this stuff up. We are finding what is out there and drawing rational conclusions from it. It just so happens that your God isn't one of those conclusions. But I'm gonna have to end this video here. I'm sorry if it's short, but Frank starts diving into other things right about now. But I do want to remind you all that my t-shirts are still being sold, and they are still on sale 15% off for the next week or so. They do come in colors other than white, so check them out if you're interested.